Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 71 and we have a good one for you today. Today's fish is very popular in the grocery store. You've probably eaten this fish, but do you actually know what's going on with this fish? Well, you're here to find out. Today we are going to be talking about the Rougheye rockfish. So, scientific name, Rougheye rockfish, scientific name Sebastus aleutianus. Again, that is Sebastus aleutianus. It is part of the family Scorpinidae, which is the family of scorpion fish. If you remember an earlier video we did with the lionfish, Scorpinidae was also the family that fish belonged to. And Scorpinidae is known to produce a lot of venomous fish. And we'll get into this. Do you know if the Rougheye rockfish is venomous? Well, stick around, you'll find out once again. Now, this fish is also known as the blackthroat rockfish or the black tip rockfish. And the reason for that is because, and I had to find a drawing because I couldn't find a good picture, but they're known as a black tip because of these tips on the edges of their fins. They'll get this darker coloration. So we kind of skipped a little ahead to the description there, but we'll get there. These are found in the North Pacific, specifically, well, I wouldn't say specifically. Usually they're found along the coast of Japan over to the Aleutian Islands and then south to California. So very similarly to one of the fish we did earlier, the Pacific spiny lumpsucker, it follows that same trend. And kind of like the Pacific spiny lumpsucker, these live near the seabed on boulders and rocks, surrounded by like soft substrate, so sands. And then they'll also be found in caves and crevices. So just think about these real rocky seabed floors. They really like to be on those. But something a little different than the Pacific spiny lumpsucker, these are found deep. These are very, very deep water fish. They're usually found at about between 150 and 400 meters in depth, which is about 500 to 1500 feet, but they have been found deeper. I've seen some stuff saying that they actually will go down to 2200 feet. So they'll be way down there. And in fact, it's known that the larger fish, the larger rockfish, actually live in deeper water than the small ones. But I have something interesting to note about that. Remember, I said the larger fish live deeper than the smaller ones. Well, it's been recently discovered that the Rougheye rockfish is actually probably two different species. Completely different species with different depth distributions. You can really only tell them apart in slight variations of color, and scientifically right now they're known simply as type 1, type 2 Rougheye rockfish. But there is research going on into whether or not these fish are different and they separate themselves based on how deep. So that would mean that one species is actually larger than the other species, predominantly anyway. Something else about these are a cold water fish. This is a little crappy here. It's got this 3D model I found right here, which is kind of interesting, but you can get a good idea of these. But they are living on the bottom and they're a cold water fish. Their temperature that these fish have been found in actually range from 31.4 to 41 degrees Fahrenheit, which is negative 0.3 to 5 degrees Celsius. So these things like it cold. They cannot really go farther south than California, and even when they do, they have to stay deep because apparently these fish cannot survive in warm waters very well. If you haven't gathered from this, these are a rather large fish. They can get fairly significant in size, actually. The average adult size is about 80 centimeters, which is about 31 inches. And they've been known to grow up to 97 centimeters, which that would be about 38 inches. In fact, the IGFA record in terms of weight, the IGFA, remember the International Game Fish Association, that record is 14 pounds 12 ounces, which that's about 6.7 kilograms. That's a rather significant fish. But something else to note, when we discuss these sizes, sometimes there's a large gap in between your average size fish and your monster fish. Whereas this one, 31 inches to 38 inches, is not really all that big a difference. So that tells you that this species just stays large, and just that one happened to be a little bit larger. Now, why is the Rougheye rockfish named the Rougheye rockfish? Well, it's actually named because there's approximately 3 to 10 spines found on the lower eyelid. And not only that, there are spines found all over the gill plate. They're kind of hard to see in this model, but you can see there's just spines everywhere. And it's not just limited to the eye, by the way. These are scorpion fish, though. So if scorpion fish have spines, they're usually found venomous. So you have all these spines along the back as well, and you can really see it on this large adult right here. All these spines, and then there's spines right here in front of the anal fin. We can go to the picture. You can kind of see the spines a little bit more detail. There's spines here. There's spines on the back of the opercle flap. Like, there's just a ton of spines on this. And like most scorpion fish, as I said, they are venomous. But the Rougheye rockfish venom, and I believe it's as most rockfish, the venom is actually relatively mild and very seldom causes more than minor pain or swelling. Very, very mild. Shouldn't hurt you too bad. It might cause you quite a bit of pain though. Now, as you can tell from the pictures, they do have this kind of pink, red, tannish colors, and just really irregular patches of like darker colors. So you can see here, it's kind of this pale, and then it's just got a patch here, a patch there. It's usually got a patch at the back of the operculum. I mean, we discussed the black ends on the pectoral fins and the second dorsal fin, along with the caudal fin. I mean, it's really not. It's an interesting color pattern. Don't get me wrong, but it's not necessarily known for its coloration. But it does have excessively large scales. If you can see in here, these scales are pretty large, not carp large, but they're still very, very large. Even in this picture, which, by the way, I apologize, there wasn't a lot of pictures for the Rougheye rockfish, especially good. Most of them are pictures, either not Rougheye rockfish, or they're these people fishing pictures, which I should bring into, a lot of people think these have crazy large eyes, and they do. These are excessively large eyes with a rather large mouth as well. But the reason why people think they have large eyes is if you see them in pictures like this and like this, what has happened is those eyes have basically gone through explosive decompression, and so they're bugging out because they're living at such deep waters that the difference in water and the difference in barometric pressure changes. That's what causes these fish to die by their air bladder exploding, so their eyes are bugging out. That's what's causing that. They're not necessarily bug-eyed in the deep, as you can see here, but they still have this really large eye. Don't get me wrong. Something else, they do have a little kind of nub, a big underbite. Now, you might think with this extremely large mouth, they're a voracious predator. Well, they do seem to consume quite a bit of food, but their diet actually consists primarily of shrimp, crab, and other tiny crustaceans, and they'll eat smaller fish as well, but they're not really going after any sort of big prey. They really seem to be lower down. I did find some research that they do feed on barred-eye crab, which, if you have watched The Deadliest Catch, is one of the crab that the commercial fishermen go for. So just a little interesting, but I couldn't find anything that says they really eat anything larger than that. Now, these fish do sometimes form schools at parts of the years, but the larger fish actually tend to be very solitary most of the year. These are not a schooling fish. They're not a very, they don't group up into schools. I can't really explain that. They're not social butterflies with each other, I guess I should say. That's about as I can get. But something interesting about these is that they are an ovoviviparous species, meaning that the fertilized eggs do actually remain in the ovary until they hatch and emerge as larvae. So that's a really interesting fact. But we're gonna go on because now we have the interesting fact we're gonna end the video on. So the interesting fact that we're gonna end the video on is the fact that this fish is among the most long-lived of fish species, meaning it's lived a long time. There's actually been records that it has been known to live up to 205 years old. So these fish are extremely long-lived. Most fish do not live that long. In fact, most of the rockfish, I believe, tend to live about 20 to 30 years. So even that's kind of long, but the rougheye rockfish doesn't even reach sexual maturity until 20 years of age. So that's a very long-lived reproductive cycle. But there is a catch to that, and this is kind of the darker side of this. Remember I said that they are known to be excellent food, wonderful table fare. Well, this can actually lead to overfishing. These fish do not have a technical season. I don't believe they do anyway. So they can be fished year-round. So, and with that long-lived aspect, meaning they can live a long time, but they don't reach sexual maturity until 20 years of age, that probably means that a lot of the undersized rougheye rockfish have probably not had a chance to reproduce. And the issue with that is because they live so deep, these fish do not survive the being caught and brought up to the surface very well. So this could lead to some problems in the future of theirs. In terms of how much of this fish is caught, in Canadian waters, abundance information derived from surveys from the commercial fishermen, they have found out that commercial fishery has maintained a relatively constant catch rate between 1,000 and 2,000 tons annually. So that's been consistent over the last 2 decades, last 20 years. So that is a lot of rougheye rockfish, and there's not a good way to sample and determine how the populations are doing down there. So this population is in a prime setup to potentially crash due to overfishing. Sorry to end on a sour note, but we have to talk about these things. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. If I don't, please be safe. Have a great day. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you do. I'd really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones. And peace.